The complete work of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 3, Section 5, Detroit Tribune, February 16, 1894. The Brahman monk Swami Vivekananda again lectured last evening at the Unitarian Church, his topic being Hindu philosophy. The speaker dealt for a time with a general philosophy and metaphysics, but said that he would devote the lecture to that part pertaining to religion. There is a sect that believes in the soul, but are agnostic in relation to God. Buddhism was a great moral religion, but they could not live long without believing in God. Another sect known as a giants, that is Jains, believe in the soul, but not in the moral government of the country. There were several millions of this sect in India. Their priests and monks tie a handkerchief over their faces, believing if their hot breath comes in contact with man and beast, death will ensue. Among the Orthodox, all believe in the revelation. Some think every word in the Bible come directly from God. The stretching of the meaning of the word would perhaps do in most religions, but in that of Hindus, they have the Sanskrit, which always retain the full meaning and reasons of the world. The distinguished Oriental thought there was a 16th sense far great than any of the five we know we possess. It was the truth of revelation. A man may read all the books on religion in the world and yet be the greatest blackguard in the country. Revelation means later reports of spiritual discoveries. The second position some take is a creation without beginning or end. Suppose there was a time when the world did not exist. What was God doing then? To the Hindus, the creation was only one of forms. One man is born with a healthy body, is of good family, and grows up a goodly man. Another is born with a maimed and crooked body and develop into a wicked man and pays the penalty. Why must a just and a holy God create one with so many advantages and the other with disadvantages? The person have no choice. The evildoer has a consciousness of his guilt. The difference between virtues and vice was propounded, was expounded. If God willed all things, there would be an end to all science. How far can man go down? Is it possible for man to go back to brute again? Vivekananda was glad he was Hindu. When Jerusalem was destroyed by Romans, several thousand Jews settled in India. When the Persians were driven from their country by the Arabs, several thousand found refuge in the same country and none were molested. The Hindu believe all religions are true, but they are antidates all others. Missionaries are never molested by Hindus. The first English missionaries were prevented from landing in that country by English, and it was a Hindu that interceded for them and gave them the first hand. Religion is that which believes in all. Religion was compared to the blind man and the elephant. Each man felt of a special part and from it drew his conclusions of what an elephant was. Each was right in his way and yet all were needed to form a whole. Hindu philosophers say truth to truth, lower truth to higher truth. It is the ideal dream of those who think that all will at some time think alike, for that would be the death of religion. Every religion breaks up into little sects. Each claims to be the true one and all the others wrong. Persecution is unknown in Buddhism. They sent out the first missionaries and are the only ones who can say they have converted millions without shedding a drop of blood. Hindus, with all their fault and superstitions, never persecute. The speaker wanted to know how it was Christians allowed such iniquities as are everywhere present in the Christian countries. Miracles. Evening News, February 17, 1894. I cannot compile with the request of the news to work a miracle in proof of my religion, said Vivekananda to representatives of this paper after being shown the news editorial on the subject. In the first place, I am no miracle worker, and in the second place, the pure Hindu religion I profess is not based on miracles. We do not recognize such a thing as miracle. There are wonders beyond our five senses. There are wonders beyond our five senses, but they are operated by some law. Our religion has nothing to do with them. Most of the strange things which are done in India and reported in a foreign paper are sleight of hand tricks or hypnotic illusions. They are not the performance of the wise men. These do not go about the country performing their wonders in the marketplaces for pay. They can be seen and known only by those who seek to know the truth and not moved by the childish curiosity. The Divinity of Man, Detroit Free Press, February 1894. 18th Feb 1894. Swami Vivekananda, Hindu philosopher and priest, concluded his series of lecture, or rather sermons, at the Unitarian Church last night, speaking on the divinity of God. In spite of the bad weather, the church was crowded almost to the doors half an hour before the Eastern Brother, as he likes to be called, appeared. All professions and business occupations were represented in the attentive audience: lawyers, judges, ministers of the gospel, merchants, rabbi, not to speak of many ladies who have, by their repeated attendance and rapt attention, shown a decided inclination to shower adulation upon the dusky visitor whose drawing room attraction is as great as his ability in the rostrum. The lecture last night was less descriptive than preceding one, and for nearly 2 hours Vivekanand wove a metaphysical texture on affair human and divine, so logical that he made science appear like common sense. Science appear like common sense. It was beautiful logical garment that he wore. He replete with as many bright colors and as attractive and pleasing to contemplate, and one of the many hued fabric made by hand in his native land, and scented with the most seductive fragrance of Orient. This dusky gentleman uses poetic imagery has an artist using colors, and the hues are laid on just where they belong. The result being somewhat bizarre in effect, and yet having a peculiar fascination, kaleidoscopic, where the swiftly succeeding logical conclusions and the deft manipulators was rewarded for his effort from time to time by enthusiastic applauses. The lecture was prefaced with the statement that the speaker had been asked many questions. A number of these he preferred to answer privately, but three he had selected for reasons which would appear to answer from the pulpit. They were: do the people of India throw their children into the jaws of the crocodiles? Do they kill themselves beneath the wheels of the juggernaut? Do they burn widows with their husbands? The first question the lecturer treated in the vein that an American abroad would answer inquiries about Indians running around in the street of the New York and similar myths which are even today entertained by many persons on the continent. The statement was too ludicrous to give a serious response to it. When asked by certain well meaning but ignorant people why they gave only female children to the crocodile, he could only ironically reply that Probably it was because they were softer and more tender and could be more easily masticated by the inhabitant of the river in the benighted country. Regarding the juggernaut legend, the lecturer explained the old practice in the sacred city and remarked that possibly a few in their zeal to grasp the rope and participate in the drawing of the car slipped and fell and were so destroyed. Some such mishaps had been exaggerated into the distorted version, from which the good people of other countries shrank with horror. Vivekananda denied that people burned widows. It was true, however, that widows had burned themselves. In few cases where this had happened, they had been urged not to do so by the priests and holy men who were always opposed to suicide, where the devoted widows insisted, stating that they desired to accompany their husband in the transformation that had taken place. They were obligated to submit to the fury test. That is, they thrust their hands within the flames, and if they permitted them to be consumed, no further opposition was placed in the way of fulfillment of their desires. But India is not the only country where women who have loved have followed immediately the loved one through the realms of immorality. Suicide is in such cases have occurred in every land. It is an uncommon bite of fanaticism in any country, as unusual in India as elsewhere. No, the speaker repeated, the people do not burn women in India, nor have they ever burned witches. Proceeding to the lecture proper, Vivekanand proceeded to analyze the physical, mental, and soul attributes of life. The body is but a shell. The body is but a shell. The mind sometimes that acts but a brief and fantastic part, while the soul has distinct individuality in itself. To realize the infinity of self is to attain freedom, which is the Hindu word for salvation. By a convincing manner, the argument the lecturer showed that every soul is something independent, for if it were dependent, it could not acquire immorality. He related a story from the old legend of his country to illustrate the manner in which the realization of this may come to the individual. A lion is leaping towards a sheep in an act gave birth to a cub. The lion is dead, and the cub was given suck by by the sheep, and for many years thought itself a sheep and acted like one. But one day another lion appeared and led the first lion to the lake, where he looked in and saw this his resemblance to the other lion. At that he roared and realized the full majesty of self. Many people are like the lion, masquerading as a sheep and get into a corner, call themselves sinners and deemed themselves in every imaginable fashion, not at seeing the perfection and divinity which lies in self. The ego of man and woman is the soul. If the soul is independent, how then can it be isolated from the infinite world? Just as the great sun shines on the lake and numberless reflections are the results, so the soul is distinct like each reflection. Although the great source is recognized and appreciated, the soul is sexless. When it has realized the condition of absolute freedom, what could it have to do with sex which is physical? In this connection, the lecturer delved deeply into the water of Swedenborgian philosophy or religion, and the connection between the conviction of the Hindu and the spiritual expression of the faith on the part of the more modern holy man was fully apparent. Swedenborg, Swedenborg seemed like a European successor of an early Hindu priest, collecting clothing in modern garb, clothing in modern garb, an ancient conviction, a line of thought that the great of the French philosopher and the novelist Balzac saw fit in embody saw fit to embody in his elevating tale of the perfect soul. Every individual has in himself perfection. It lies within the dark recesses of his physical being. To say that a man has become good because God gave him a portion of his perfection is to conceive the divine being has God minus just so much perfection has he who has imparted to the person on this earth. The eh, the inexorable law of science proves that the soul is individual and must have perfection within itself, the attainment of which means freedom, not salvation, and the realization of the individual infinity. Nature, God, religion, it is all one. The religion are all good. A bubble of air in the glass of water strives to join with the mass of air without in oil in vinegar and other materials of differing densities, its efforts are less or more retarded according to the liquid. So the soul struggles through various mediums for the attainment of its individual infinity. One religion is best adapted to the certain people because of habits of life, association, hereditary trails, and climatic influences. Another religion is suited to another person, another people for similar for similar reasons. All that is best seemed to be the substance of the lecturer's conclusion. To try abruptly to change to change a nation's religion would be like a man who sees a river flowing from the Alps. He criticizes the way it has taken. Another man views the mighty stream descending from the Himalayas, a stream that has been running for generations and thousands of years, and says that it has not taken the shortest and the best route. The Christian pictures God as the personal being seated somewhere above us. The Christian cannot necessarily be happy in heaven unless he can stand on the edge of the golden streets and from time to time gaze down into the other place and see the difference. Instead of the golden rule, Instead of the golden rule, the Hindu believes in the doctrine that all non-self is good and all self is bad and other and through this belief the attainment of the individual infinity and the freedom of the soul at the proper time will be fulfilled. How exclusively vulgar, stated Vivekananda, was the golden rule, always self. What was the Christian's creed? To do unto others as you would be done by. It was a horrible, barbarous, savage creed, but he did not desire to decry the Christian creed. For those who are satisfied with it, to them it is well adapted. Let the great stream flow on, and he is a fool who would try to change its course, when nature will work out the solution. Spirituality in the true acceptance of the world in the true acceptance of the world, spirituality, and the fatalist. Vivekananda emphasized his opinion that all was well and he had no desire to convert Christians. They were Christians, it was well. He was a Hindu, that also was well. In his country, different creeds were formulated for the need of people of different grades of intelligence. All these markings the progress of the spiritual evolution. The Hindu religion was not one of self, ever agnostical in its aspiration, ever holding up promises of reward or threats of punishments. It shows to the individual he may become Christian, alleged to have come from God, who manifested himself to certain men on earth is atrocious. Atrocious. It is horribly demoralizing, and Christian creed, accepted literally, has a shameful effect upon the moral natures of the bigots who accept it, retarding the time when the infinity of self may be attained. The Tribune reporter, perhaps the same who had earlier heard giants for James, this time heard Barry for Bone. But otherwise, with the exception of Swamiji's statement regarding the golden rule, he seems to have reported more or less accurately. Detroit Tribune, February 18, 1894. Swami Vivekananda at the Unitarian Church last night declared that the widows were never burned alive in India through religion or law, but the act in all cases had been voluntary on the part of the human. The practice had been forbidden by one emperor, but it had gradually grown again until a stop was put to it by the English government. Fanatics existed in all religion, and the Christian as well as in Hindu. Fanatics in India had been known to hold their hands over their heads in penance for so long a time that the arm had gradually grown stiff in that position, and so remained ever after. So too men had made a vow to stand still in one position. This person would in time lose all control of the lower limbs and never after be able to walk. All religions were true, and the people practiced morality, not because of any divine command, but because of its own good. Hindus, he said, did not believe in conversions, calling in perversions, surrounding associations surrounding an education were responsible for the great number of religions, and how foolish it was for the exponent of one religion to declare that another man's belief was wrong. It was as reasonable as a man from Asia coming to America and after viewing this course of the Mississippi to say to it, "You are running entirely wrong. You will have to go back to the starting place and commence it all over again." It would be just as foolish for the man in America to visit the Alps and after following the course of the river to the German Sea, to inform it that its course was too tortuous and that the only remedy would be the flow as directed. The golden rule, he declared, was as old as the earth itself, and to it could be traced all rules of morality. Man is a bundle of selfishness. He thought the hellfire theory was all nonsense. There could not be perfect happiness when it was known that suffering existed. He ridiculed the manner some religious person have while praying. The Hindu, he said, closed his eyes and communed with the inner spirit, while some in Christian he had seen had seemed to stare at some point as if they saw God seated upon his heavenly throne. In the matter of religion, there were two extremes, the bigot and the ethics. There was some good in the ethics, but the bigot lived only for his own little self. He thanked some anonymous people who had sent him a picture of the heart of Jesus. This, he thought, a manifestation of bigotry. Bigotry belongs to no religion, they are a singular phenomena. The Love of God. Detroit Tribune, February 21st, 1894. The first Unitarian church was crowded last night to hear Vivekanand. The audience was composed of people who came from Jefferson Avenue and the upper part of the Woodward Avenue. Most of it was ladies who seemed deeply interested in the address and applauded several remark on the Brahman with much enthusiasm. The love that was dwelt upon by the speaker was not the love that goes with passion, but a pure and holy love that one in India feels of for his God. As Vivekananda stated at the commencement of his address, the subject was the love the Indian feels for his God, the love the Indian feels for his God. But he did not preach to his text. The major portion of his address was an attack on the Christian religion. The religion of the Indians and the love of his God was a minor portion. The points in his address were illustrated with several applications, any anecdotes, anecdotes of famous people in the history. The subject of the anecdotes were renowned Mughal emperors of his native land and not of the native Hindu kings. The professors of religion were divided into two classes by the lecture, the followers of knowledge and the followers of devotion. The end in the life of the followers of knowledge was experience. The end in the life of the devotee was love. Love, he said, was a sacrifice. It never takes, but it always gives. The Hindu never asked anything to his God, never prayed for salvation and a happy hereafter, but instead lets his whole soul go out to his God in an entrancing love. The beautiful state of existence could only be gained when the person felt an overwhelming want of God. Then God came in all his fullness. There were three different ways of looking at God. One was to look upon him as a mighty personage and fall down and worship his might. Another was to worship him as a father. In India, the father always punished the children, and an element of fear was fixed with the regard and love for a father. Still another way of think, Still another way to think of God was as mother. In India, mother was always truly loved and reverenced. That was the Indians' way of looking at their God. Vivekananda said that a true lover of God would be so wrapped up in his love that he would have no time to stop and tell members of another sect that they were following the wrong road to secure God and strive to bring him to his way of thinking. Detroit Journal. If Vivekanand, the Brahmin monk who is delivering a lecture course in this city, could be induced of remain for a week longer, the large hall of Detroit would not hold the crowds which would be anxious to hear him. He who has become a veritable fade, as last evening every seat in the Unitarian Church was occupied, and many were compelled to stand throughout the entire lecture. The speaker's subject was the love of God. His definition of love was something absolute, unselfish, that which has no thought beyond the glorification and adoration of the object upon which our affection are bestowed. Love, he said, is a quality which bows down and worships, asks nothing in return. Love of God, he thought, was different. God is not accepted, he said, because we really need him, except for selfish purpose. His lecture was replete. His lecture was replete with story and anecdote, all going to show the selfish motive underlying the motive of love for God. The songs of Solomon were cited by the lecturer as the most beautiful portion of the Christian Bible, and yet he had heard with deep regret that there was a possibility of their being removed. In fact, he declared as a short clinging argument at the close, the love of God appears to be based upon the theory of what can I get of him? What can I get out of it? Christians are so selfish in their love that they are continuously asking God to give them something, including all manners of selfish things. Modern religion is, therefore, nothing but a mere hobby and fashion, and people flock to church like a lot of ships. Next, the Women's of India, Detroit Free Press, March 25th, 1894. Vivekanand lectured last night at the Unitarian Church on the Women's of India. The speaker reverted to the women of ancient India, showing in what high regret, what high regard they are held in the holy books where women were prophetessed. This spirituality then was admirable. It is unfair to judge woman in the East by the Western standard. In the West, woman is a wife. In the East, woman is a mother. The Hindu worships the idea of mother, and even the monks are required to touch the earth with their forehead before their mother. Chastity is much esteemed. The lecture was one of the most interesting Vivekanand had delivered, and he was warmly received. Detroit Evening News, March 25th, 1894. Swami Vivekananda lectured at the Unitarian Church last night on the women of India, past, medieval and present. He stated that in India, the woman was the visible manifestation of God, and that her whole life was given up to the thought that she was a mother, and to be a perfect mother, she must be chaste. No mother in India ever abandoned her offspring, he said, and defied anyone to prove the contrary. The girls of India would die if they, like American girls, were obliged to expose half their bodies to the vulgar gaze of the young men. He desired that India be judged from the standard of that country and not from this. Tribune, April 1, 1894. While Swami Vivekananda was in Detroit, he had a number of conversations in which he answered questions regarding the women of India. It was the information he thus imparted that suggested a public lecture from him on this subject. But as he speaks without notes, some of the points he made in private conversation did not appear in his public address. Then his friends were in the major disappointment. But one of his lady listener has put on the paper some of the things he told in his afternoon talk, and it is now for the first time given to the press. To the great tablelands of the high Himalayan mountain first came the Aryans, and there to this abides the pure type Brahman, a people which we Westerners can but dream of, pure in thought, deed, and action, so honest that a bag of gold left in the public place would be found unharmed 20 years after, so beautiful that it use own phrase. To use Vivekananda's own phrase. To see a girl in the field is to pause and the marvel that the god would make anything so exquisite. Their features are regular and their eyes and hairs are dark. Their skin, the color which would be produced by the drops which fell from the pricked finger into the glass of milk. These are the Hindus in their pure type, untainted and untrammeled. As to their property laws, the wife's dowry belongs to her exclusively, never becoming the property of the husband. She can sell or give away without his consent. The gift from anyone to herself includes those of the husband, are her alone, to do with as she pleases. Woman walks abroad without fear. She is as free as perfect trust in those about her can render her. There is no zenana in the Himalayas, and there is a part of India which the missionaries have never reached. These villages are most difficult to access. These people, untouched by the Mohammedan influence, can but be reached by wearisome and toilsome climbing and are unknown to Mohammedans and Christian alike. India's first inhabitants. In the forest of India are found races of wild people, very wild, even to cannibalism. These are the original Indians and never ever were Aryans or Hindu. As the Hindus settled in the country proper and spread over its vast area, corruption of many kinds found home among them. The sun was crunching and the man exposed to it very dark in color. 5 generations are but needed to change the transparent glow of wild complexion of the dwellers of the Himalayan mountains to the bronzed hue of the Hindu of India. Vivekanand has one brother, very fair, and one dark than himself. His father and mother are fair. The women are apt to be. The cruel etiquette of the Zinena established for protection from the Mohammedans, keeping them within doors. Fairer, Vivekanand is 31 years old. A clip at American men. Vivekanand asserts with an assumed twinkle in his eyes that American men assumes him. They prof- profess they profess to worship woman, but in his opinion they simply worship youth and beauty. They never fall in love with the wrinkles and the grey hair. In fact, he is under a strong impression that American men once had a trick inherited, to be sure, of burning up their old woman. Modern history calls this the burning of witches. It was men who accused and condemned witches, and it was usually the old age of the victims that led her to the stake. So it is seemed that burning woman alive is not exclusively in Hindu custom. He thought that if it were remembered that the Christian churches burned a old woman at the stake, there would be less horror expressed regarding the burning of Hindu widows. Burning compared. The Hindu widows went to her death agony amid feasting and song, arrayed in her costless garment, and believing for the most part that such an act meant the glory of paradise for herself and family. She was worshipped as a martyr, and her name was enshrined among the family record. However horrible the rite appears to us, it is a bright picture compared to the burning of the Christian witches who consider a thing, guilty thing from the first, and was thrown in the stifling dungeon, horror, tortured cruelly to extort confession, subjected to an infamous trial, dragged amid juggle to the stake, and consoled amid her suffering by the bystanders' comfort that the burning of her body was but the symbol of her hell's everlasting fires in which her soul would suffer even great torture or torment. Mothers are sacred. Vivekananda says the Hindu is thought to worship the principle of motherhood. The mother outranks the wife. The mother is holy. The motherhood of God is more in his mind than the fatherhood. All women, whatever the caste, are exempt from corporal punishment. Should a woman murder, her head is spared. She may be placed astride a donkey facing his tail, thus riding through the streets of Drummer shouts her crime, after which she is free, her humiliation being deemed sufficient punishment to serve as a preventive for further crime. Should she care to repent, there are religious houses open to her where she can become purified, and she can, at her own option, at once enter the class of monks and so become a holy woman. The question was put to Mr. Vivekanand whether the freedom thus allowed in joining the monks without a supreme over them did not tend to hypocrisy among the order, as he claims, of the purest of Hindu philosophers. Vivekanand assented but explained that there is no one between the people and the monk. The monk has broken down all caste. A Brahmin will not touch the low caste Hindu, but let him or her become a monk, and the mindest will prostrate himself before the low caste monk. The people are obliged to take care of the monk, but only as long as they believe in his sincerity. Once condemned for hypocrisy, he is called a liar and falls to the depth of mendicancy, a mere wandering beggar, inspiring no respect. Other thoughts. A woman has the right of way with even a prince. When the studious Greek visited Hindustan to learn of Hindu, all doors were open to them. But when the Mohammedans with the sword and Englishman with his bullet came, their doors were closed. Such guests were not welcomed. As Vivekanand deliciously words it, when the tiger comes, we close our doors until he has passed by. The United States says the United States says Vivekanand has inspired him with hopes for great possibilities in future, but our destiny as that of the world rests not in the lawmakers of today, but in the woman. Vivekanand's word, the salvation of your country depends upon the woman.